Hello everybody, welcome to yet another episode of the Social Blueprint. And now that we are in the Hagin season, obviously we want to hear a big Jewish thought from a big Jewish leader, and that's why I'm excited today to be joined by Rabbi Daniel Rabin, the head rabbi from Caulfield Shule. And Daniel is not just a big rabbi, but he's also a man of the people that we're going to hear all about. And Daniel, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's an absolute pleasure and privilege to be here with you, and thank you for the invitation.
Great. Hey, Daniel, as I mentioned, you're on Instagram. I see pictures of you working out. You're into a lot of spirituality that also goes along with mental wellness as well.
Yeah.
In short, you're really a man of the people, as I mentioned before. How do you, in today's day and age, I suppose, you're a very different rabbi than, say, 25 years ago. How has the Rabbonim changed, and what is your approach?
It's a great question. I think, the reality of the times have changed. The way the world engages with each other through, the invention of social media and the technology world has changed. And so I think people in general interact in different ways. And so I think as a community rabbi today, as you said, the rabbi of old, and no disrespect to the rabbi,
sure,
because obviously we, in Judaism, we always appreciate and value the traditions. Of course, that's a big part of our culture and our faith, that we respect the wisdom of our sages and our ancestors. But when I say, the rabbi of old was very focused on different requirements. Rabbi literally means teacher.
Right.
And so rabbis have always been teachers per se, teaching their community, but there was different things that the community, needed to learn.
Right.
So if you go back in time, I remember I was actually giving a class not too long ago. A lot of the questions rabbis got were about whether their chicken was kosher or not. So they would have their own sort of...
The real halakha.
Yeah, they'd come and say, Rabbi, look, we shechted the chicken. This looks wrong. Is it okay? So the rabbis had to be very versed in those halachot, those laws. Today, no one's brought a chicken to me since I became a rabbi.
You never know.
But you're dealing with, interpersonal things. People, of course, lose loved ones, so that's a big area of the rabbi's role, to help people through that time. And so you need to be engaged in the people's lives. And of course, they're celebrating still. There's weddings and there's bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs. So you've got to be a rabbi of the people to help them through their life cycle journey. And so, for me personally, it's engaging people at their level, not ever looking that you stand above them. You're with them and you can guide them, and you can still be that teacher.
Right.
But a teacher, in the relevance of today.
Yeah. And as I said, people see you doing what I would call normal activities. They see you at the gym. They see you walking around. I personally love that aspect. Is that something that's just natural to you, or are you purposely out there?
It's a great question, and I think possibly every rabbi would have a different answer. For me personally, and I think it is an important feature that rabbis should have, is that people need to understand that you are just another human being.
Right.
And I think the more that you can be relatable to people, and again, I'm not putting it on, to be relatable, but I think people, maybe rabbis of old were scared to be doing things because they may be not seen, might not be the most rabbinic activity. But for me, I see it completely differently. The fact that I want to stay fit and try stay fit and work out and, into the mental health and well-being, and just, go to a footy game, or go play some sport, which I grew up doing. I think people do say, look, we can relate to that. This is somebody who, if we do have an issue, or if we do want to ask a question, they're grounded in this level. And that's one of the reasons I did a secular degree, a master's degree in counselling, which we might talk about.
Yeah.
Because I want people to see that I've also got the academic training besides for just the religious training. And then you can help people in so many different ways.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of normal things, you're the rabbi now of Caulfield Shule, but you haven't been there that long. I believe it's about 6 months or a year or something like that.
Yeah.
Just like when anybody makes a huge career change or job change, if you will, there's a lot of hopes, dreams, fears, and all the rest of it that goes with it. What was your thought process?
So it's I think at the time of this filming, I think it's about 10 months that we've been at Caulfield Shule.
Okay.
And we've there's expectations and there's the reality of what you're actually living, the experience. And for me personally, a lot what I expected is happening, but going through is obviously not always the same emotion and feeling that you might have. So, Caulfield Shule for me has been, we were very excited to take on this position. It's a big role.
Right.
It's in the center of the community, and a huge membership base, and a lot of people just in the area are coming to it. So for me, it's been really a fantastic 10 months in that we've been able to engage with so many people, and the activities have come back to the shul, and the attendance is now lifting up a lot. Friday night at the shul is quite busy, and even Shabbos morning and Simcha. So yeah, it's been a really, I guess, wonderful time. Obviously, still got many dreams and hopes, and as you said, goals for the community.
Right.
But I think we're on the right trajectory, hopefully.
For sure. And Rabbi, we're entering the big Hagim season. I can't resist asking you, every year we try to come up with some type of theme or thematic. What are you thinking for this Hagim season?
Okay, so the Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur experience, obviously a big time for rabbis to engage the community, to inspire the community. I think the theme is not necessarily a complex one, because I think we're all sort of living through it, and that is the post-COVID era. And it's learning from what happened over COVID. The importance of family, the importance of values, the importance of being together, and I think not taking for granted things that we did before COVID. So I guess the great theme for this year is coming back to real life, and ensuring that we've taken the lessons from what we learned over COVID, and not forgetting, because sometimes, and you see this in many different ways. People go through, God forbid, a loss or an accident or a tragedy, or something happens in their lives, and they're like, I'm going to think things through differently from now on.
Right.
And then fast forward 2 months later, they already forgot about it. So we mustn't forget that way that we were so desperate to be with each other.
Yes.
And to be able to be with family, to see loved ones, and to travel. So let's enter this year with that new way of thinking, and just being glad that we can do it again.
Right. And I have a personal question for you. That Hagim, it's actually about a month long, so it's not a short period of time. One of the issues I always struggle with is pacing myself. I tend to actually start out of the gates way too fast and too early, and then get a little bit burnt out. I'm sure for you it's even exponential. Do you have any thoughts about how we should handle it?
Yeah, I think, Judaism in general, I think, has to be dealt with in a very take it easy approach. I think I often, people come to me, Rabbi, I want to start learning this. I think there's a general principle to not rush into things, but the Hagim are exhausting, and so therefore I think it's important that people, and obviously everyone has different things they're used to. Some have, are used to sitting in every shul service. Some perhaps, I think the trick is, whatever you do, whatever amount of time you can spend, make it meaningful that time. So, don't get worried whether you're there once or 3 times or 10 times, but and if you are there 10 times, at least, set aside 5 minutes of that time that you say, I'm actually going to talk to God, or I'm actually going to try and focus and reflect on myself.
Yeah.
And so make small little meaningful stops along the way. And I think that will hopefully give people a lot more, ability to enjoy the Hagim, as opposed to seeing it as a chore, or it's just too long, it's too busy. And as a rabbi, look, it is long.
That's great advice.
We hope that the sages of old would have spaced out a bit better, but it is a great month, And I think the goal is to recognize that you're going in the one in. Hopefully, you look differently, not from all the food you've been eating, but you look differently from that. You've changed, your perspective has changed. You've listened to things, you've understood, you've prayed, you've talked, you've enjoyed family, and so the next year will be different.
For sure. And I guess now turning from that 1 month a year to the other 11 months of the year. And I have a serious and hard question for you now, Daniel, which is, when we look at any kinds of surveys or studies, religion in general, and Judaism obviously too, there's a waning of spirituality when you look at all these results. Intermarriage rates are running. My question to you, Daniel, is why be Jewish in an age where there's anti-Semitism? You're about to get into tons of arguments. I see it especially amongst 25-year-olds and even on college campuses. I mean, there was a resolution at the University of California, Berkeley, one of the best schools. They're outlawing any type of pro-Israel speaker, which seems nuts. Why be Jewish? Yeah,
great question, and I think it is a tough question. It is a tough question because people, it's not just theoretical, as you said. This is real life, and when I first came to Melbourne, I was a campus rabbi. I was at Melbourne Uni and Monash, and I remember there was one incident in Israel at the time. I don't know if you recall, the Israeli commandos came onto that boat, and it was a bit of a disaster what happened on the boat or the ship, and
yes,
it reverberated across the university campus. I remember being summoned into a meeting by some of the student groups, and
Right.
and the rhetoric and the harsh anti-Semitism was palpable, and I felt, wow, this is intimidating. But I think, the best answer I can give you is that there's something called emet, truth.
Yes.
And I think, sometimes you might get despondent, but I always tell people, just remember that truth is everlasting. And if you hold on to values that are true and that are meaningful and have been there for generations, then they will survive. And I think there's no greater story of survival than the Jewish people. And yes, it's been an arduous road. It's been a road which has been, but here we are. Here we are talking about the Chagim. And so I think my advice to anyone who is feeling a bit intimidated is obviously, listen to the advice of our sages, and that is find a mentor, find groups.
Right.
Don't feel like you're alone. Because
Right.
we're in this together, and we have support, and there are amazing organizations which can support and encourage. So I think remember that, as I said, truth will always prevail. And why be Jewish? Because I think we have the best product that brings meaning to someone.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's really I guess it's the fabric that holds us all together.
It is, indeed.
Daniel, you're more than a rabbi, though. You're also, as you mentioned earlier, you're a mental therapist as well, I believe. Can you just talk a little bit about your background on that front, and also how I personally feel like that so many of the values today being, I guess, espoused in mental health are already in the Torah. But can you just tell us a little bit about that background from you?
It's interesting you say that, because when I was doing my master's degree, so I did a master's degree in counselling and psychotherapy, and I remember in most of the lectures that I was doing, and most of the areas of different thoughts in terms of counselling and psychotherapeutic mechanisms,
Right.
So much of it was like, this is a Kabbalistic idea, this is a Torah value.
For sure.
So you're right, we do have, and a lot of the great psychotherapists were Jewish.
Yes.
Because it is grounded in our faith. But for me, mental health has always been something which I think, as a rabbi, people's lives are, your job is really to try and inspire people and try and help people live better lives. And I think if we don't see the mental health as a big part of that, then we're missing, as I said, half the picture. And so I thought, what better way could I, train myself
Right.
to be able to assist people is to understand how mental health works, and to have those skills to assist people when they're going through challenges. Obviously, with the help of psychologists and referrals to their GPs. I'm not taking it all on my own shoulders, but
Right.
to have a better understanding of it. And I think, as I said, a big part of today's role of the rabbi is the pastoral side, is counselling, maybe not in the formal setting of a counselling space, a psychologist's office, but people come to the rabbi's office.
Right.
I did in my thesis, in fact, was looking at the rabbi as counsellor, but more about the impact it has on the rabbi. But in that, when I was doing the research, many people, certainly if they're connected to a shul,
Right.
or even if not, they'll go to the rabbi first incident that occurs. They might just come have a chat to the rabbi, and so a rabbi has to acknowledge that person might be coming in a very difficult time, and sometimes they might mask it in a Jewish question.
Right.
So you also got to be very adept to know what people
I'm sure.
are asking. There's the famous question of the person who came to ask the rabbi, can they have milk at the Seder instead of wine? And the rabbi answered, no, you can't have milk. And then his wife, who was much more intuitive, fortunately, came to him and said, I think you should review that question. Go back and ask him, why is he having milk? Obviously, they can't afford to have wine. And so
Right.
the rabbi ran after him and said, I take this back, what's going on? And he broke down. He said, we've lost our business. And
Right. Sure.
so he mastered it as a question, a halakhic question. And the rabbi was just focusing on the halakhic question.
Right.
And so I think we always
That's
got to
a
look
great
beyond,
point.
what is it that the person's really here about? Is it just they want to understand Jewish law, or is it that there's something else that they'd like to engage with the rabbi?
Yeah, and I suppose also, is that one of the ways of getting people into shuls now? A lot of times it's honestly not done through a let's learn halakha. It's done through some type of social setting. Is that also part of your training to understand that is the way to engage people?
Yeah, I think you've got to just look at what's out there. There's so much distraction. I think there's always been distraction, but
Right.
today's day and age, even more so. Perhaps in the days of the shtetls and the farms, they had possibly other distractions.
Right.
But we have social media today. We have so much on offer that I think rabbis and shuls and any organization for that matter has to really recognize that you cannot take for granted attendance.
Right.
People don't owe you anything. Even though your great grandfather davened at the shul or attended this organization, it's no longer given that they will then be part of your community. So you have to continuously work to engage the people. And I think for me, what I've seen, the greatest way to engage people is to get to know people, for people to get to know you, and then hopefully by them getting to know you, they see what's really on offer, and if it's making a difference in their lives, then you're doing well, So
yeah, incredibly,
that's what we're trying to do.
Incredibly well said, because I think that especially as we're entering the post-Holocaust generation, where Judaism has to be relatable, not just out of a guilt that my great-grandparents, what they went through. It has to be relatable to you as a person.
It does, and I think, maybe it was Shmuley Bateach, Rabbi Shmuley Bateach, when he was here, he said that I heard it recently. Someone else mentioned that, gone are the days of connecting. Can connect to Judaism in two ways: Ahava and Yira. Ahava is love, and Yira is through fear.
Right.
The rabbis of old and Judaism of old was really about fear. You do this, you're going to get punished. Today it has to be an embrace of love and simcha and joy, and it's fun. You've got to make Judaism fun, and you've got to make it relatable. But again, I'm not saying we should get rid of there's so much beauty in the tradition. I'm not saying we need to change the words of the tefillah, because but it's things around it, and also education. Explain to people what's going on and why are we doing this. I do a lot of weddings. Sometimes couples who are secular, who don't, they're like, oh, this seems very archaic. And then you explain to them the symbolism behind each of the things that are happening, and they're like, wow, this is so beautiful, so romantic. And I was like, well, the rabbis 1,000 years ago came up with it. Right. So they obviously wanted something. So it's about amalgamating the two worlds.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It doesn't have to be one or the other.
Oh, absolutely not.
Rabbi, before we finish, I want to talk about something that's kind of fun and interesting.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about hypnosis.
Yes. So
and people may not notice about you.
So when I was in, I can't remember how long ago it was now, but I when I was about 16, I went to a hypnotist show. A bunch of my friends got tickets and went to go watch a hypnotist. And I asked for volunteers, and they said you have to be over 18, and I said I'm over 18. Anyway,
sure.
And I got hypnotized, and I loved it. I really enjoyed being on stage, and so I decided I wanted to study how to do this. And so there was a guy in South Africa who taught people how to, and he took me under his wing and he taught me the art of doing it. And I started, after I came actually in Melbourne years before I came back as a married man. I was working in one of the schools here, and I remember on the camps I did hypnotist shows. I haven't done it in a number of years. When I first came back to Melbourne when I was working on campus, we did a few Shabbatons with students, and I did a few shows and hypnotized a few people. And it's stage hypnosis, so it's not really like deep core hypnosis, because there is problems with that halachically, Right. But this is really, we don't have the time to get into it, but I'll just show you very quickly.
Sure.
So take your finger like this.
Okay.
Put it on your head.
Yeah.
Put it on your cheek. Touch your nose.
I think about it.
So you're exactly, but a lot of people just immediately touch their chin, and that's hypnosis. It's just suggestions. Right. You're following my suggestions, right? And so even though I say touch your nose, and you're touching it, you know it's not your nose, but so that's really what it is. It's helping people with their suggestions.
Well, maybe that's what you're doing throughout your life, actually.
Right. Anyone comes to God, I'm not hypnotizing when I speak. It's all real. It's not any performance, So, and I think that's really the message. You've got to be real. And I think the only way to be real is to continuously reflect on your own actions, your own journey in this world,
Great. Daniel, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. You're a man.
I appreciate you, and I thank you for having me over here today.
Okay.
And wishing the Social Blueprint and everyone who watches it and is involved with the organization Shana Tova Mituka, and only good things going forward.